What are Brant Wuthering Waves' biggest pros and cons? That's what I'm here to tell you today. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. We've absolutely got to talk about how this lad's best assault team gained a substantial upgrade for a relatively recent release. Lupa. The triple fusion team is a strong one, featuring all 3 limited 5 stars of its element that have been released up until this point. Previously, the strongest fusion team would have consisted of the Changli-Brant duo, with the Pirate Lad's outro being perfectly suited to the Phoenix Lady. However, with Lupa around, we've gained another piece to the Brant Wuthering puzzle. Her own outro is utterly perfect for him, offering the lad with plenty of fusion percent and basic percent. This makes for an extremely smooth team rotation, in which you swap from Lupa to Brant to Changli and repeat. This is easily the best fusion team that we have in the game as of now, no questions asked. If you have Lupa and Changli, pulling for Brant is genuinely worth your time, since the upgrade will certainly be felt. It's the biggest change in value that Brant has had since his last banner in my opinion. This also isn't even mentioning his DPSing teams. Before, they were a little bit cope. I'm still a little hesitant to imply that they're optimal in any way, because playing him as a second slot teammate is basically always going to be better. However, if you're maining Brant, that's likely because you really enjoy the guy. First of all, highly understandable, dude's utterly hilarious. And second of all, it's an actually viable way to play. Before, you kind of just had to cope with Sanhua. She was perfectly fine here, of course, but the team wasn't crazy by any means. Could certainly clear, but nothing insane. Plus, you really wanted Brant's signature weapon in order to justify playing this team. Unfortunately, his damage just wasn't high enough without it to justify playing him as a dedicated main DPS. But now that we have Lupa around, his main DPS teams genuinely feel a lot better now. For Brant in particular, she's an utterly brilliant teammate, and her outro being fantastic for him seriously comes into play here. If you have her, the DPS Brant actually becomes a pretty decent consideration. I will add, you still ideally want Brant's signature, but either way, if you're somebody that pulled Lupa and doesn't have a Changli, if you're not already using Encore, then that's another potential use case for her with Brant. Or that's just another way that you can use him in general if it piques your interest. This pirate lad doesn't only sail the 7 seas when it comes to his boat, no. He's also well-traveled when it comes to his team options. He genuinely ends up being a good slot-in within so many scenarios. Even though he gets banners so often, like seriously Kuro, this man has had 1 gazillion reruns at this point, this dude somehow still comes out on top with a brand new synergy to speak of. I've already discussed all of his fusion-related use cases. Well, actually no. There's still one more. That would be Encore. So even if you don't own a single limited 5-star fusion character, this man still has a good use case. Encore's still a great standard banner DPS to this day, so there's also that to consider. And even outside of fusion-based teams, his ability to offer skill percent on outro along with his decent to great personal damage depending on whether you have a sig or not, does wonders for his general versatility on a Wuthering Waves account. For instance, this makes him good in Carlotta teams. This is still relevant, because the esteemed Motelli Lady released over half a year ago, yet still remains as an absolutely top-tier meta unit. There's still plenty of relevance to her, and if you pulled her way back when, there's a high chance that you're still likely getting valuable use out of her. So he's not just good with any old DPS, no, he's actually synergistic with some proper meta legends. Jinxi's worth mentioning too. While her competition as a main carry is definitely steep these days, and I wouldn't say she's as game-breaking as she used to be, she still remains as being an absolutely excellent main DPS within the TOA. She has a ton of different viable second slot teammates, and Brant is one of them. The only thing that you want to take into account is that you then want to make sure that you're using Verena as your third slot teammate, as Brant's only offering skill percent, no coordinated attacks. But even so, he remains as a good option for her. So I wouldn't worry about Brant finding a use case on your account. Shoot. If you really don't have anyone, there's always Chishia. This crazy fella will quite frankly force himself to be useful to you, one way or another, because there's just that many scenarios in which you can use him. I will say that a good chunk of his value diminishes if you don't have Sig, and that is something that I'm going to continue to mention, since it's super relevant to his value. I'm going to touch on it in a little bit more detail later, but all around, in terms of teammates, this guy has more than enough for you to find a place for him to work. It also wouldn't be a fair Brant video if I didn't mention how easy this guy is to use, and how comfortable he is to play. This man genuinely is just as easy to play as Camellia. Like, there is hardly anything to mess up here. My guy can probably be played with one hand, which I'm sure most Brant superfans are already doing anyway. His forte nuke is super large and satisfying. I do have my gripes with it, but we'll get onto that later. Either way, the point stands that this dude's super easy to utilize. Plus, he just offers so much to you. Healing is really decent. Sure, it doesn't matter much if you're a player that's just able to dodge. I don't want to overvalue it. However, this guy is one of the most comfortable units to take on holograms with, because he's able to shield you up and heal up any big hits you take over the course of a rotation. What I find is that, against most holograms, you can still take at least one large hit. If you can dodge most hits after that, Brant's able to heal you up, which allows you to make another mistake again. I feel like there's far greater room for error, not to mention how Changli Brant is simply my favorite combo when it comes to playing hologram content. His shields are also great for that same purpose, and it all around makes him super casual friendly. If you're not very good at the game, then Brant's got a super low bar to entry in my opinion. Also, his personal damage is nothing to sneeze at if you have his Sig. Like, that Forte nuke can do numbers, man. I feel like he has one of the playstyles that I actually like more in Wuthering Waves. Every unit has fantastic gameplay in their own right, but this Pirate Lad in particular, he's especially fun to use in my humble opinion. Also, while fun on a unit is super subjective, come on, the guy ults almost all the time, and he always sounds like he's having an absolute blast when he's in battle. That's a big pro of this fella. He's super hard to hate, super lovable character. I'd also be doing an insane disservice to this dude if I didn't mention how good he feels to play in the overworld. Like, this dude feels just as good to play as Changli in my opinion, and that's saying something. I do still think the Phoenix Lady is perhaps at least a notch above him or so in that aspect, but even so, having him alone in an overworld team is a dream come true, and having both of those two paired together, yeah, you've got yourself something special, man. An absolute overworld steamroller. Consider that plenty of Wuthering Waves' gameplay is exploration content in the open world. I always like mentioning this in Brant or Changli videos for two reasons. Firstly, because I feel like their overworld prowess just needs to be highlighted with how good it is. And secondly, I have personal experience. No two characters feel this amazing in the open world. It's kind of absurd. So if you pull for this guy, give him a spin out there. He always has his ult up after basically every encounter for me, and much like Changli, is able to take care of encounters solo without feeling gimped. Gimped as in wanting a second teammate, like Absolution Phoebe wanting Shakona or Spectre Rover, or just generally not getting ult back fast enough like Zani. These things do make a difference to the exploring experience in my opinion. Just wanted to highlight his capabilities in that regard. Okay, we've said basically all the good there is to say about everybody's favorite hyperactive pirate, and boy was there a lot of good to say. He's a fantastic unit for sure. However, he 100% comes with his caveats, and that quite frankly can be a deal breaker in his case. For starters, despite Brant having had multiple banners by this point, we still haven't had anything done to help out his weapon situation. Essentially, Brant's best 5-piece set, Tie-Breaking Courage, really wants you to have quite a lot of ER, 250 to be exact, and without a signature weapon, that is very hard to achieve. So you have two options: either use a really bad supportive weapon on him in order to meet the stat requirements, or use Emerald of Genesis on the 5-piece fusion set. Both outcomes result in a Brant that does significantly less damage than before, and this really does hurt his value in plenty of teams. And while he's still generally worth getting if you're big on fusion teams in that case, it is undeniable that he is a much better unit with S0R1. I would like to emphasize, S0R0 Brant is not the same thing as S0R1 Brant. Those are two entirely different beasts, and I want to make that very, very clear. What makes his signature so good is that not only does it provide energy, but it also provides great offensive stats. No other weapon is able to fulfill these two conditions for him, and I thought, okay, maybe over time we were just going to get more weapon options for him, maybe a new craftable or something in an event. I was expecting an event weapon, that's what I was placing my bets on. However, that just hasn't happened. He's had multiple banners, and at this point, I just don't think he's going to get another weapon option. So he basically is stuck really wanting a signature. Otherwise, you are stuck with a much worse Brant than what he could potentially be. Don't get me wrong, a lot of limited 5-star units in Wuthering Waves really do want their signature weapon. This is nothing new. However, there are 3 units in this game that really want it. Cardathea, Frolova, and Brant. Brant was actually the first character who really needed a signature by a staggering amount, and that problem is just not going away anytime soon. At least in the case of Cardathea, whenever we get more HP scalers, that's just going to kind of sort itself out. And there's always Stringmaster for Frolova, even if it is significantly worse in her signature. But in Brant's case, there is just no saving grace, to be honest. You do just really want that signature. Now, I will repeat, if you're really big on Changli, I still think he's a good pull, because his outro skill has a ton of value for her. But would I get him as a generalist pull because you like the guy if you can't get a signature? Well, I mean, if you really like him, don't let me stop you. But I will say, it is going to feel a lot worse without a signature. He has all these amazing qualities going for him, but it is locked behind that sig of his, unfortunately. And because Kuro just hasn't added a new event weapon for him in forever, I just don't think it's happening at this point. I mean, hey, the silver lining is that Unflickering Valor is a really cool looking weapon, but I just don't really consider an S0R0 Brant to be as worth it. I do think that in most of these videos, usually, whenever a character has a ton of overwhelmingly good pros, that can more often than not outweigh the cons that comes with them. However, Brant is one of the situations where I do genuinely think that this major con of his can entirely recontextualize whether you pull for this character or not. It is actually that bad. I am dooming a bit hard here, like, don't get me wrong, he's still going to work without a signature, it's just going to be a lot worse. Keep that in mind. And then this last thing, oh boy, it's not really as much of a deal breaker, I just kind of think it's an annoying thing that you're gonna have to deal with, and it will inevitably happen to you, but you see his big ol' forte skill, that can miss and get very easily interrupted, and I believe that Kuro is aware of how finicky it is, because when it comes to Lupa, time freezes around her so that she can do her heavy attack and not get interrupted. Because with Brant, you can very easily get knocked out of your forte skill state. Yep. Or it can straight up just miss if the enemy's really fast or knocks you away. And when you consider that this is his main source of damage output, it does get very annoying. Now, it's not an insane deal breaker because you can just reset the stage that you're playing. It's not really that deep. However, it is undeniably frustrating. At this point, if I miss one of his forte skills, I just kinda continue the run. I only reset if I miss 2 or more at this stage. Not enough for it to be some massive deal breaker, but I do just want to point out that that is indeed a thing within his kit, and I am glad that going forward in the future, Kuro has looked at future units and went, okay, we're just gonna freeze time to make sure that this doesn't happen anymore. Thank you, Kuro, for being aware of that, but in Brant's case, unfortunately, that is where we are in regards to his forte skill. Ultimately, Brant is a genuinely well-balanced character, but you just really need a signature in order to unlock his full potential. His personal damage just gets gimped so much if you don't have Sig, and it's very unfortunate, because I don't really think this is going to be sorted out anytime soon. Unless we coincidentally get another ER scaling main DPS, or sword user, or sword using some DPS, it's just going to stay this way, because that will be the next opportunity for us to get some sort of event weapon for him. And even then, if we didn't get that, it would just be another 5-star to pull for, in which case, why wouldn't you just get Unflickering Valor in that situation? I do think that he is very usable on many accounts, and he's honestly quite a strong unit. I feel like he's been one of the most used characters on my account in total. He is just that useful, it's kind of crazy. And you're not gonna regret it if you do manage to get that weapon of his. But if you can't, it's not that he's suddenly not worth it with absolutely no redeeming qualities, he still very much can be useful to you, just don't expect him to be at his full potential. He definitely can be upgraded. And if you're somebody that pulled him on his first banner, and you're debating between getting a signature or not now, I would definitely go for it if you intend to use him more. Definitely go for it if you can. Ultimately, he is a great unit though, and you 100% can still get amazing value out of him. But man, Kuro, this guy's had like, what, 3 banners now? Dude's getting the VIP treatment. Are you gonna be getting him this time around? Or what are your plans? Let me know down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Hopefully this video was able to tell you Brant Wuthering Waves' biggest pros and cons. This has been Juice, signing out. And as always, let the flames rise! Ha 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 ha!